The night was warm in Dubai. The city shone with neon lights reflecting on its glass skyscrapers, while luxury cars drove through the streets with the same elegance with which the wind swept the sand from the nearby desert. But for Jimmy Donaldson, better known as MRBEAST, that was not just any night. Sitting on the terrace of a five-star hotel, he contemplated the horizon with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Beside him, his closest team was chatting about ideas for the next viral video. MRBEAST was listening, but his mind was elsewhere. His eyes were fixed on the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa. "Jimmy, are you listening to us?" asked Chris, one of his best friends. MRBEAST blinked and returned to the present. Yes, sorry, I was thinking about something. Chandler, another of his friends, laughed. "Let me guess. Some new crazy thing?" Jimmy smiled. "What I had in mind wasn't just any crazy thing. It was the biggest of all. Guys, what would you think if I climbed the Burj Khalifa?" The table fell silent. For a second, all that could be heard was the distant sound of traffic and the murmur of the wind. Then came the explosion of reactions. "That?" Chris almost spit out his drink. "Climb it? Did you go crazy?" Carl exclaimed. "Brother, do you want to end up in jail or in the hospital?" Chandler added. Jimmy laughed. He knew his idea was ridiculous, but that had never stopped him before. Listen. It's not just because of the madness. I want to do this for something really special." He looked at them intensely, as if each word he was going to say weighed tons. "I want to propose to my girlfriend." From the top of the Burj Khalifa, the group was shocked. Chris was the first to react. Let's see. Are you saying that you want to climb the tallest building in the world? To declare you?" "Exact." Carl clutched his head. This is the most ridiculous thing you've ever said." Chandler stared at him. "And that's why ... I love it." Everyone started talking at the same time. Conflicting opinions, laughter, crazy ideas. But in the midst of the chaos, Jimmy felt something clear in his chest. This was his moment. Your great challenge. Your proof of love. Sure, there were problems. Legal, physical, logistical, security. But if there was one thing MRBEAST knew how to do better than anyone, it was turning the impossible into reality. The challenge was posed. Now there was only one question. How the hell was I going to do it? Jimmy was in the hotel suite, with the view of the Burj Khalifa illuminated at night. His mind was in a whirlwind of emotions. He knew his friends thought he was joking, but he was serious. I was going to do this. He was going to propose to his girlfriend from the top of the tallest building in the world. While the rest of the team dispersed, Chris, Carl, and Chandler stayed with him on the terrace. There was something in Jimmy's look that told them it wasn't just one of his usual crazy things. "Seriously, Jimmy," Chris said, crossing his arms. "Why are you so determined about this?" Jimmy leaned on the railing and smiled. "Because she deserves it." Carl and Chandler exchanged glances. "Let's see, brother," said Carl, sitting down in an armchair. "We know you love her a lot, but do you really need to do something so extreme to show it?" Jimmy sighed and settled back in the chair. "I knew I had to explain to them where all this was coming from. When I met her, it was during one of the worst moments of my life." The three friends remained silent. "Interested. You remember when I was obsessed with growing my channel, right? I spent my time recording, editing, thinking of new ideas. I didn't sleep, I didn't go out, I barely ate well. I became completely consumed with work, and honestly, I felt alone." Chris nodded. They had noticed it at the time, but Jimmy never talked about it. "And then she appeared." Jimmy smiled, remembering that moment. He didn't care that I was famous on YouTube. He didn't care how much money he made or how many subscribers he had. He only cared about who he was, they. And it made me see that there was more to life than just making viral videos. Carl smiled. "That's beautiful, brother, but ... Chandler interrupted. Do you really need to risk your life to ask her to marry him? Jimmy laughed. It's not just because of her. It is because us. I want our history to be legendary. I want that when we are old, we can tell our grandchildren that I made the most epic proposal in history. Chris exhaled and shook his head, smiling. He's crazy. Yes, Carl added, completely. But that's what we like about him, Chandler said. Laughing. Jimmy looked at them intensely. Guys, this is serious. I need your help to make it happen. The three of them were silent for a moment, until Chris spoke. Okay, let's say that we are inside. How the hell do you plan to do this without dying trying? The question hung in the air. It was time to turn the dream into a real plan. The excitement of the moment faded as reality hit hard. Climbing the Burj Khalifa was not only a physical challenge, but also a legal, security, and logistical problem. Dubai was not a place where you could do whatever you wanted. MRBEAST and his team met in the hotel conference room, surrounded by laptops, tablets, and a whiteboard full of crazy ideas. Chandler, with his arms crossed, looked at the options on the screen. Let's see. Let's escalate this with logic. Carl laughed. Rather, let's lower our expectations before we end up in a Dubai prison. Jimmy ignored the joke and pointed to the Burj Khalifa on a projected image. We need to find the safest way to get to the top without getting arrested. Option 1. Helicopter. Chris shook his head. Impossible. Flying over the Burj Khalifa is prohibited without special permission from the government. And even if we did, it would be too obvious, Carl added. There would be no surprise. Option 2. Drones. Chandler snorted. Brother, do you want to be taken up with a swarm of drones? Jimmy laughed. I don't know, what if we use drones to carry the ring and record from the air? That might work, Chris said, but it doesn't solve how you get to the top. Option 3. Climb it like crazy. This is where everything got serious. Chris opened an article on his laptop. Only 2 people have scaled this building illegally. Alain Robert, the French Spider-Man, and a guy who tried to do it without permission and was arrested halfway there. Carl grimaced. Translation: if you try this without permission, you go to prison. Jimmy sighed. I knew this wouldn't be easy, but at that moment, a knock on the door interrupted the conversation. Dressed in suits, with an impenetrable expression, they entered the room without wasting time. Mr. Donaldson, one of them said in perfectly pronounced English, we have been informed that you are planning a video involving the Burj Khalifa. Jimmy exchanged glances with his team. Yeah. The men looked at each other. Dubai has strict regulations on high-risk activities. If you attempt to climb the Burj Khalifa without approval, you will be arrested immediately and could be applied strong sanctions. Carl swallowed. How loud are we speaking? The man did not hesitate. Immediate expulsion from the country, $1 million fines, and possible imprisonment. The silence in the room became heavy. Chris ran a hand over his face. What if we get permission? The other officer raised an eyebrow. That would be highly unlikely. Jimmy felt the adrenaline rush through his body. Was I really going to finish everything before I started? Peak voltage. It could be canceled before even trying. But in his mind, something clicked. There is always a way. I just had to find her. The hotel room was silent after the warning from the Dubai authorities. The message had been clear. If they tried to climb the Burj Khalifa without permission, they would face serious consequences. But MRBEAST was not ready to give up. It just meant that he had to find another way. Chris broke the silence. Well, brother, what do we do now? Jimmy took a deep breath and stood up from his seat. We are looking for help. That same night, Jimmy and his team contacted some of the best climbers in the world. Through calls and messages, they made a connection with a group of experts in extreme urban climbing, including climbers who had worked on skyscraper rescue and security missions. One of them, a Swiss climber named Lucas Reinhardt, agreed to meet with them the next day. Lucas was a tall, thin man with an analytical gaze and unwavering confidence. He had climbed some of the most imposing buildings in the world and knew every technique necessary to do it safely. After hearing Jimmy's plan, Lucas crossed his arms and smiled. Climb the Burj Khalifa. That's the craziest idea I've ever heard. Is it impossible? Carl asked. Lucas shook his head. Nothing is impossible, but if extremely dangerous. Jimmy smiled. That wasn't a no. Lucas and his team began to study the building in detail. They used satellite images, leaked architectural plans, and structural analysis. After hours of study, they came to a conclusion. There was a possible route to climb without breaking the rules. The Burj Khalifa has an external structure with maintenance platforms and holding points for window cleaning workers. Lucas explained. If we get permission to use that access, we could simulate an escalation without breaking the rules. Chris leaned forward. So we could do it? Legally? Lucas nodded. In theory, yes. But here comes the real problem. Lucas turned his laptop towards them and displayed a weather report. At this altitude, the wind speed can exceed 60 kilometers per hour. That means if you're climbing and a gust hits you, you could lose your balance and fall. Carl blinked. That sounds deadly. It is, Lucas said seriously. Even with harnesses and safety equipment, the risk is enormous. Jimmy stared at the screen. He knew this would be dangerous, but now he was faced with something he couldn't control: nature itself. That night, Jimmy went out alone to the hotel terrace. He looked at the illuminated Burj Khalifa and felt the wind hit his face. For the first time since he had started this plan, a real doubt settled in his mind. Was I taking this too far? He thought about his girlfriend on your team, in his community of millions of followers. If something went wrong, was it worth risking everything? The craziest idea of his life was about to become a reality, but at a price that he could not yet calculate. The decision was made. MRBEAST was going to climb the Burj Khalifa, but there was a small problem. I didn't have any climbing experience. If I wanted to achieve it, I would need physical and mental training. Something much more demanding than any YouTube challenge I had done before. Lucas Reinhardt, the Swiss climber, had organized an intensive training plan. Jimmy and his team headed to a high-performance gym in Dubai, specializing in training for mountaineers and urban climbers. As soon as they entered, Jimmy saw ropes hanging from the ceiling, climbing walls at different angles, and a huge structure simulating a section of a skyscraper. This looks scary, Carl said, looking at the height of the walls. Chandler crossed his arms. I pass. You can't come in, Chandler, Chris said. If Jimmy is going to suffer, we all suffer. Lucas interrupted the conversation by slapping his hands. Okay, guys. This is not a challenge of who eats the most hamburgers or who survives 24 hours on an island. This is scaling. There is no room for error here. Jimmy swallowed. Well, where do we start? Lucas smiled. For the basics. Strengthen your grip, your resistance, and your mind. The first exercise was hanging from a bar for a whole minute. Jimmy tried it ... and failed after 20 seconds. God, this is harder than it seems, he complained. Shaking his sore hands, Carl and Chandler tried it next, with even worse results. Chris, on the other hand, managed to hold on 45 seconds. Come on, Chris is the real athlete here, Carl shouted. But Lucas didn't seem impressed. If you can't last a minute on a bar, how do you expect to stay in the air hundreds of meters high? Jimmy sighed. I knew Lucas was right. This was going to take a lot more effort than I imagined. For the next test, Lucas took them to a smaller building in downtown Dubai. It wasn't the Burj Khalifa, but it was 50 meters high and a structure designed for skyscraper climbing training. This is for you to experience what it means to be suspended in the air, Lucas said, adjusting Jimmy's harness. Go up halfway and tell me how you feel. Jimmy put on his gloves and started climbing, using the metal frames to propel himself. At first, Everything was going well. Until he looked down. "Oh no, 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 no," he said, pressing himself against the wall. The vertigo hit him completely. From there, the people on the street looked like small dots moving. He felt his body tense and his mind was screaming at him to get down immediately. "Don't look down, Jimmy," Chris yelled from the ground. Too late. Jimmy tried to keep going up, but his hands began to shake and his grip weakened. Suddenly, his foot slipped. Aha! Jimmy felt the emptiness in his stomach as his body fell until the harness abruptly stopped him. Halfway, he had failed his first test. From below, Carl, Chandler, and Chris were trying to contain their laughter. "Well," Carl said, "if this were the Burj Khalifa, we'd be organizing his funeral right now." Jimmy, still hanging in the air, sighed. He had a long road ahead of him. Jimmy was in his hotel room, with the lights off and staring at the ceiling. The training had been a disaster. He had failed in the test building. His grip was weak and vertigo paralyzed him. What was he doing? For the first time in his career, he felt like he had gotten into something too big. He rolled over in bed and grabbed his phone. He opened the chat with his girlfriend and saw her latest messages. "I miss you. How's everything going?" "I know. You'll make it." Jimmy exhaled deeply. He couldn't give up. That's when he received an unexpected message from Lucas. "I know someone who can help you. If you really want to do it, come tomorrow at 6 a.m. to the desert." The next day, Jimmy and his team traveled in vans to a remote area on the outskirts of Dubai. In front of them stood an enormous steel structure, a military training tower. Next to Lucas, a man of about 50 years old, with a strong build and a serious look, was waiting for them. It was Amir El-Farid, one of the most respected climbers in the Middle East. He had worked in mountain rescues, had climbed the most dangerous peaks in the world, and had a clear philosophy. Climbing is not a physical challenge. It's a mental battle. Jimmy swallowed. "So do you think I have what it takes to do it?" Amir watched him in silence for a few seconds. No. Jimmy blinked. "Oh, well, brilliant." Chris laughed. But Amir continued, "Not yet. But if you're willing to forget who you are for a few days and do what I tell you, maybe you'll survive." Jimmy smiled. That was the kind of training I needed. The next few days were crazy. Amir wasted no time and subjected Jimmy to very tough tests. Grip strength, hang from a bar for 5 minutes. Endurance, climb a 15-meter rope without support. Control mental, being suspended in a metal structure 30 meters high. Jimmy fell. He scraped his hands. He complained 1,000 times. But every time he wanted to give up, Amir made him remember why he was there. "Why are you doing this?" Amir asked one night. When Jimmy was exhausted, Jimmy remained silent. He thought about his girlfriend, how much he loved her, how every crazy thing he did in his life made sense because she was by his side. He looked up, determination in his eyes, because it's not just a challenge. It is a proof of love. Amir smiled for the first time. "Then get ready, because this is not over yet." Jimmy nodded. Now he was ready to try one more time. 4:30 Burj Khalifa towered over Dubai like a colossus of glass and steel. In the pre-dawn darkness, the city lights shone like stars fallen from the sky. At the base of the building, the Mr. Beast worked frantically, securing cameras, checking drones, and going over the plan one last time. Jimmy took a deep breath. "It's today." Carl patted him on the back. "Hey, if you die, can I keep your channel?" Jimmy gave a nervous laugh. "If I die, I want them to make an epic video with my funeral." Chris shook his head. "If you die, they cancel all of us." The camera started recording. Jimmy stood in front of the lens with the Burj Khalifa illuminated. Behind him, "Guys, I've done a lot of crazy things in my life, but this is the biggest one." Literally. The drones captured spectacular shots of the building. Jimmy adjusted his harness, checked his gloves, and looked up. 828 meters of pure madness awaited him. Amir approached him. Remember, one movement at a time. Don't think about the top. Think about the next grip. Jimmy nodded. See you upstairs. The first meters were pure adrenaline and excitement. Every grip, every movement brought him closer to his goal. Carl and Chandler were commenting from the floor. It looks amazing, Carl shouted. Yes, but what happens if he gets a cramp up there? Chandler asked, worried. Chris shot him a look. Dude, don't help from above. Jimmy felt invincible. This is not that difficult. But then, something unexpected happened. At 100 meters high, a gust of wind hit the building. Jimmy felt his body shake, his fingers slipping. The world seemed to become smaller. Shit. The cameras captured the moment. From below, Carl covered his mouth. Was that a normal wind? Or a bad omen? Jimmy tried to calm himself down, but then his radio began to fail. Static, intermittent signal. Jimmy? Amir asked from the other side. More interference. Jimmy looked up. He had more than 700 meters left. This was just beginning. I'm not going to stop now. He made sure his grip was firm and continued climbing. The worst was yet to come. The wind roared more than 150 meters high. Jimmy felt his body shake with each gust. His breathing quickened. This wasn't in the plan. He looked down. His team, which had looked small before, now seemed insignificant. The lights of Dubai were shining, but he only saw the void under his feet. The grip of his hands felt more unstable. Breathe, Jimmy, breathe. He tried to calm down. One move at a time, as Amir said. At the base of the Burj Khalifa, Amir watched with a frown. That wind is not normal. Carl noticed that Amir was tense. Tell me it's not as serious as it seems. Amir did not respond. He just grabbed his radio and talked to Jimmy. Come down now. The sound of static was the only thing that responded. Jimmy tried to continue climbing, but the wind hit him again. His fingers slipped out for a second. That felt eternal. He was left hanging with only one arm. His heart stopped. If he made one more mistake, this could end very badly. He gritted his teeth and used all his strength to hold on with his other hand. I'm not going to fall here. Elsewhere in the city, the Burj Khalifa security monitors began flashing with images from thermal cameras. A guard frowned. What the hell is that? They enlarged the image. A human silhouette climbing the building. Alarm activated. Within minutes, several security patrols headed to the base of the skyscraper. Carl saw the lights approaching and felt a chill. I think we have a problem. The wind was still blowing strong. Security lights began to surround the area. From his radio, Amir tried one last time. Jimmy, if you don't come down now, you could be arrested. Jimmy took a deep breath. What should I do? If he went down, it would all have been in vain. But if he continued, he could lose everything. He closed his eyes. He thought about his girlfriend. She was the reason for all of this. When he opened them again, I had already made a decision, and it wasn't the one everyone expected. The world froze. Heard a moment that seemed eternal. Jimmy slipped. His fingers came loose from the structure of the Burj Khalifa. The void pulled him down. His body began to fall. Adrenaline hit his system like lightning. Pure instinct. In the last millisecond, his right hand found a grip. Acute pain ran over his wrist as he stopped his fall. Shit. He gasped, his heart beating uncontrollably. The wind roared in his ears. Jimmy hung with one arm at more than 200 meters high. Sweat trickled down his forehead. Come on, Jimmy, concentrate, he said to himself, trying to calm his mind. But fear had entered his system. His mind, as if sensing real danger, began to bombard him with memories. His girlfriend smiling on their first date. His team laughing when he told them his crazy idea. Messages from his fans supporting him in each challenge. And then, the warnings. It's too risky, Jimmy. If you fall, there are no second chances. Is it really worth it? Jimmy looked down. The city lights seemed far away, as if he no longer belonged to this world. His fingers hurt. His strength was running out. If I let go now, everything would end. Should he give up? Should he listen to everyone who told him it was crazy? Should he prove that love could take him to the top of the world? He closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. And then, he made a decision that would change his destiny. I'm not going to die today. With all his strength, he pushed himself back to the climb. But the danger was not over yet. The decision was made. Jimmy, his body exhausted and his mind on edge, found a spark of determination within him. He remembered why he was there. As he hung hundreds of meters above the ground, images of Thea, his girlfriend, flooded his mind. His smile, his words of encouragement, his unwavering faith in him. This is for her, he murmured, feeling renewed energy. At the base of the Burj Khalifa, his team watched with racing hearts. Carl, with a pale face, picked up the radio and with a trembling voice said, "Jimmy, brother, we know you can do it. We are with you until the end." Chris added, "You're not alone up there. Every step you take, we take it with you." His friend's words echoed in his mind. I couldn't fail them. With every movement, he felt the weight of his loved ones pushing him up. The wind was still a fierce adversary, but his will was stronger. After what seemed like hours of constant fighting, Jimmy finally reached the top of Burj Khalifa. The city of Dubai spread out beneath their feet, illuminated like a sea of stars. With tears in his eyes and a broken voice, he raised his hand to the sky and shouted, "I did it, Thea. This is for us." Although I had reached the top, his mission was not complete. There was a deeper purpose to this feat, something he had to do to make it all make sense, and that moment was about to arrive. From the top of the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, Jimmy looked out over the Dubai skyline. The city lights shone like stars beneath their feet. The wind blew gently, caressing his face. He had achieved the unthinkable, but his mission was not yet complete. With trembling hands, Jimmy pulled a small case from his pocket. As she opened it, the glow of an engagement ring reflected in her eyes. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. A short distance away, in a helicopter flying over the area, Thea Boyson, his girlfriend, watched the scene without knowing what was about to happen. She had been taken there under the excuse of a special filming, without suspecting Jimmy's true intentions. With his voice amplified by a microphone and transmitted directly to the helicopter, Jimmy spoke. "Thea, from the highest place in the world, I want to ask you something that comes from the depths of my heart. Every challenge, every crazy thing I have undertaken, has been with the hope of sharing moments like this with you. Do you want to marry me?" Tears welled in Thea's eyes as she heard those words. She covered her mouth with her hands, surprised and excited. Without hesitation, he nodded vigorously as he said, "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." The excitement in the helicopter was palpable. Jimmy's team, who had been following everything from the mainland, erupted in cheers and applause. The news spread quickly through social networks, becoming a viral phenomenon. Jimmy, still on top, raised his fist in victory. He had not only conquered the tallest building in the world, but also the heart of the woman he loved. I knew this was just the beginning of an exciting new adventure together. News of Jimmy's feat and his epic marriage proposal from the top of the Burj Khalifa spread like wildfire on social media. In a matter of minutes, millions of people around the world shared and commented on the video of the moment. The hashtags, #MRBEAST proposal and #BURJ Khalifa challenge, became a global trend. Media outlets, from news channels to entertainment blogs, covered the story, praising Jimmy's creativity and courage. At the base of the skyscraper, Jimmy's team celebrated with joy. Hugs, laughter, and tears of happiness mixed in an atmosphere of euphoria. Chris, with a smile from ear to ear, exclaimed, "You did it, brother. You made history." Carl, still with tears in his eyes, added, And besides, you got Thea to say yes. This is incredible. However, as the celebration continued, Dubai authorities did not share the same enthusiasm. Local police, upon learning of the unauthorized escalation, launched an immediate investigation. Although Jimmy had taken precautions and had relied on expert advice, he had not obtained the necessary official permits to perform such a feat in an emblematic and highly protected structure. While Jimmy and his team were reviewing the shots and celebrating the success of the proposal, he received a call on his phone. When he answered, a serious voice informed him, "Mr. Donaldson, this is Lieutenant Al Farsi of the Dubai Police Department. We need you to report to our central station to discuss your recent activity at the Burj Khalifa." The room fell into an awkward silence. Jimmy, his face pale, nodded and replied, "I understand. I'll be there right away." Upon arriving at the police station, Jimmy was greeted by Lieutenant Al Farsi, who with a serious face explained to him, "Mr. Donaldson, Dubai has strict regulations on activities in iconic buildings. Climbing the Burj Khalifa without authorization is a serious violation of our safety laws and could result in severe legal consequences." Jimmy, aware of the seriousness of the situation, tried to explain, "I understand the concern, Lieutenant. We take all necessary precautions and have experts to ensure safety. It was not our intention to break any laws." The lieutenant, however, maintained his position. "Intention does not absolve responsibility. Mr. Donaldson, we need to review all the details before making a decision." While the authorities deliberated, the world watched closely. MRBEAST's fans expressed their support on social media, while others debated the responsibility and legal implications of his actions. The question on everyone's mind was, would Jimmy face legal consequences for his daring feat? After a thorough review, Dubai authorities determined that climbing the Burj Khalifa without proper permits constituted a serious violation of local laws. As a result, Jimmy was fined substantially, intended to emphasize the importance of respecting safety and security regulations in the city. Far from being upset, Jimmy saw this situation as an opportunity to make a positive impact. He decided not only to pay the fine, but also to match its amount with an additional donation, allocating the entire sum to a charitable cause in Dubai. This action reflected his commitment to philanthropy and his desire to give back to the community that had been the scene of his feat. News of his donation spread quickly, transforming public perception of his adventure. What was initially considered reckless came to be seen as an inspiring gesture. Media and fans around the world praised Jimmy's ability to turn an adverse situation into an opportunity for the common good. Thanks to your contribution, projects were funded that benefited local communities in Dubai, leaving a positive and lasting mark. This experience reinforced the idea that, even in the midst of challenges and controversies, it is possible to find ways to do good and make a meaningful difference. News of MRBEAST's marriage proposal from the top of the Burj Khalifa spread quickly, generating an avalanche of reactions on social media. His followers from various corners of the world shared their impressions of the content creator's bold gesture, while many praised MRBEAST's creativity and bravery, calling the proposal epic and once in a lifetime. Others expressed concern about the apparent recklessness of the feat. Comments like, "It's crazy romantic," were mixed with, "He put his life at risk unnecessarily." This duality of opinions fueled debates on platforms such as Twitter, Reddit, and specialized forums. In the midst of the media commotion, Thea Buisen, MRBEAST's girlfriend, gave an exclusive interview to Rex News, where she shared her feelings about the unexpected proposal. She described the moment as scary but beautiful, highlighting the mix of emotions she experienced upon seeing Jimmy at the top of the skyscraper. In addition, he revealed that, although he knew his partner's adventurous spirit, he never imagined a declaration of love of such magnitude. The online community was quick to react with humor and creativity. Memes showing MRBEAST climbing other iconic monuments for future proposals flooded the networks. Viral clips recreating the scene with animations and parodies became a trend on TikTok and YouTube. The hashtag #MrBeast proposal dominated conversations on Twitter for several days, cementing the event as one of the most talked about moments of the year. MRBEAST's bold proposal transcended the digital sphere, being covered by international media and entertainment programs. Analysts highlighted how this event exemplifies the convergence between digital platforms and contemporary romantic narratives, redefining expectations about marriage proposals in the age of social media. After the exciting proposal from the top of the Burj Khalifa, Jimmy Donaldson, known as MRBEAST, shared his thoughts on the experience. "Sometimes, love drives you to perform actions that seem crazy. But when it's true, every risk is worth it." This adventure left profound lessons about follow the dreams. Jimmy showed that, with determination, it is possible to achieve goals that seem unattainable. The importance of effort, preparation, and teamwork were essential to overcome the challenges. Love as the engine of life. His deep affection for Thea was the force that led him to overcome his own limits. With a smile, Jimmy concluded, "I climbed the tallest building in the world, but nothing compares to climbing together for the rest of our lives." And what's next? Well, the universe is the limit.